Call the meeting to order. For those who care to, please rise for an opening prayer and a salute to our flag. If you would, bow your heads with me. Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for the time we spend together. Thank you for the citizens of this community. Thank you for their volunteerism. Thank you for all the things that you've given us. Bless this community as we move throughout this week. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please. Thank you. I have a few announcements. Miss Kathy Harrelson has a birthday. Had a birthday on January 9th. Happy birthday, Kathy. I don't mention ages, but
29.
Mark Lowe also had a birthday on December 23rd. Happy birthday, Chief. Chief Compton had a birthday on December 27th, and I don't mention ages, but he did turn 50 that day. So
350 dog years.
Is that what it is? It's appropriate. Charlie Bashirs also had a birthday on December 31st. Happy birthday, Mr. Bashirs. Karen Freeman, our Assistant City Clerk, who's not here tonight, also had a birthday on January 1st, so happy birthday. Last day to run for City Council is tomorrow, January 15th at 5 p.m. And city offices will be closed January 21st in observance of Martin Luther King Day. Any other announcements? Did I miss any? Usually Brenda gives me an evil eye if I miss something. She didn't, so I think we're okay. I'd like to open a public hearing of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri concerning an ordinance amending the zoning code and official map by changing the classification of approximately .87 acres owned by Philip and Gloria Brown located at 280 East U.S. Highway 60 from local commercial C1 to general commercial C2. Mr. Tyson, please give us the overview, sir.
Thank you. This rezone application will redistrict property located at 280 East U.S. Highway 60, also addressed as 403 Southampton Avenue, from local commercial C1 to general commercial C2. The subject property is comprised of two parcels totaling about 0.87 acres. The property enjoys frontage on U.S. Highway 60, South Maple Avenue, and also Southampton Avenue. The current land uses include two local commercial retail uses. The adopted land use plan indicates local commercial uses as being the most appropriate for this particular location. Municipal utilities, including water and sanitary sewer, are available and adequate for commercial development.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak against this particular public hearing, please step forward, state your name, sign in. Give us your best 3 minutes. Hi.
I live right by the property.
What's your name and your address?
Deanna Thompson,
Thank
409 Southampton.
Thank you, Deanna.
Ever since I've lived there, it's been grandfathered. That land is to be a buffer zone between our house and the business. And I'd like for it to stay that way. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you.
Wilma Goddard,
Hi, Wilma.
and I live at 316 East Primrose, the second house on the right-hand side of Hampton, just south of the property, east of the property. I bought a house that had been foreclosed and needed a lot of work. We have put a lot of time and effort into this house. I would like to be able to retire there. I built the patio into a sunroom. I have 3 bedrooms in there, 2 baths. One is wheelchair accessible, and I would like to stay there. But I don't want to live in an area where there is a lot of traffic and noise. I can see the things that are there now are not hampering, except there's a lot more traffic there. This is a bad area to get out on 60 highway of a morning because there is so much traffic being between Elm Street and Main Street if it's not coming one way, it's going the other, and they don't quite coordinate. And on foggy mornings, some people don't use their lights. And others use theirs on bright. But it can't have any more traffic through there. And noise factor and space, there just isn't. There aren't any small children playing there that I see now. But there are school children that come through there. There are people that walk and bike through there. And if we have a business that draws a lot of people, it would be even worse than it is now. But Republic's a nice town.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak against this particular public hearing, please step forward, state your name, and give us your best 3 minutes. Seeing none, anyone wishing to speak for this particular public hearing, please step forward, state your name, and give us your best 3 minutes.
My name is Richard Reeves. I'm the co-owner of B&R Sales and Flea Market, which is one of the current businesses now part of the rezoning. The reason this rezoning request has even come up is because I asked Dr. Brown to do it. I have the want or the goal to become self-employed, and that's the reason my wife and I have opened this business. We're doing pretty good so far, considering we're not quite a year old yet, but I'd like to expand into doing utility trailers, lightweight utility trailers. I have here that I can pass around to everybody the basic thing that I'm wanting to put in. It's not going to be a noise nuisance. Our hours are going to basically stay the same. I will do light maintenance on the trailers, which is not going to involve anything, heavy grinding, welding, anything like that, because I just don't have the space to do that or the equipment. I can see the other people's point. I've spoke with the landlord as well as the planning and zoning people have also, and we are willing to put up a buffer zone around the area that is in concern. And I just hope that the city will, grant us the opportunity to become entrepreneurs and possibly, start some more revenue in the city. There's nothing like this in the city of Republic. You can go to Lowell's and Orsolin's and buy these little cheap trailers, and if you need something done to them, good luck. I'm willing to back the trailers that I'm selling.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, he indicated he had something to pass around. Is it okay for him to do that?
Yeah, that's fine. You want to pass that around, that's fine.
My name is Belinda Reeves, Richard's wife. I'm co-owner of B&R Sales and Flea Market. We originally started the little flea market, and it seems to be a pretty popular little area. People are really excited to have this type of deal in Republic. Gives them an opportunity to go out and find some good bargains. And as far as the traffic, we have a little more traffic on the weekend, but during the week it seems to be pretty much, you see a lot of traffic come through there, but it's mostly the resident traffic that we see. We really got started with that with the intentions of going on into the trailer sales and hope that we both can be together and work this business, get a family thing going. And I've lived here my whole life, so I've watched the city grow up, and I've always wanted to be a part of that growth, and I hope that you all will give us a fair chance to prove ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak for this particular public hearing item? Seeing none, public hearing closed. I would like to make mention it is on as a first read tonight, council, so you will be able to discuss this among yourselves. I'd like to open it up now to citizen participation. Anyone wishing to speak to the council on anything not on the agenda, please step forward, state your name, and give us your best 3 minutes. Seeing none, citizen participation closed. Need a motion on the consent agenda? Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Any abstentions? Motion carries. On the financial report. Welcome, Laura. Please give us the overview of the financial report.
Sure. Good evening to all. This time you have actually 3 pieces of paper, or kind of, 3 different types of reports in front of you. Since we didn't have the second meeting in December, the sales tax report is a catch-up from that time. And since we had received November sales tax, since we received this, I went ahead and included that on there. And you will see that we only have December left to go. We are down 1.4% from last year, where we would have liked to have been over. But anyway, we'll see what December's sales tax comes in at. The motor fuel tax collections are still on schedule. 1 more month to collect on that, and we should end up to the good $120,000 over of what we had projected.
Is that total, or between the two, or just on the motor fuel?
Just on the motor fuel. Yeah. Who knows? Yeah. It's really too, soon to say what the December sales tax is going to look like, because you would assume that it would be higher with Christmas. So, and what we need to have to meet budget, you can see in past years that we haven't been that high before. So unless there was some type of a timing issue with the November sales tax, I'm afraid we're going to be flat sales tax-wise. Have the December Statement of Revenue and Expense report, and I just want to caution that this is not the final report that you will have for December, since we went to the accrual basis. Actually, when Marshall gets through with the audit is when you will have the December. So by that time, you might have, I don't know, many months of 2013 reports in the meantime. So the only thing that I want to mention is the general fund. Of course, we talk about that every month, that we want to keep an eye on that. The general fund expenditures so far for the year to date is under budget, $350,000. So, and I'm sure with 2 more months of revenues that we will see our revenues increase and come in closer to budget. So that is, positive news. And the unrestricted cash balances report, we saw some growth in that from the prior month, and even the general fund started on its incline. And so with receipt of some sales taxes and property taxes, hopefully we will, by the time you see the January, it will look much better.
Questions, comments, discussion for Laura? Anything at all on the financial report? Seeing none, need a motion to approve financial report?
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
Mr. Krischke, anything on
No, sir.
reports? Mr. Darrits? Future community events. Welcome, Jared. Your list gets smaller and smaller.
Good evening. I do like the facial hair, sir. It's very nice.
Thank you. 9 weeks worth of trying.
I thought he broke his razor.
Have you had your review yet this year?
Yeah, maybe I should. No, I do like it. Really, I do. January 17th through February 21st, toddler tumbling, 5:30 p.m. or 6:45 p.m. That's at the Republic Community Center. January 18th, this Friday, is the last day to register for winter adult basketball registration. The season begins at January 30th, and all games are held at the Community Center or Activities Building. January 18th and 25th, toddler story time, 10:30 a.m. It's a free event, once again at the community center. January 18th through February 15th is our spring adult volleyball registration. The season begins on March the 7th. This Saturday is Parents' Night Out from 5 to 9 p.m. That's for ages 4 to 12. Bring by your kids while you go out and do whatever you want. It's a good time. It's only $10 too. It's very cheap. January 21st, next Monday, in observance of Martin Luther King Day, the city offices will be closed. January 21st, also on Martin Luther King Day, we'll have our Schools Out program from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. That's for ages 6 to 12. January 25th is the last day to register for the 9th annual Father-Daughter Valentine Dance. That event itself will be held on Friday, February 1st at the Republic Community Center. January 28th is Toddler Open Gym at 10 a.m. The fee is $2 per toddler. That's a Monday, and that's held at the Republic Activities Building. And January 31st, Senior Movie Day is 2 p.m. It's a free event with popcorn and coffee, and it's at the Republic Community Center, and that movie is We Bought a Zoo. And one last thing, we are having a volunteer work day this Saturday from 10 to 2 at Brookline Park. I would invite any and everyone out there to attend. So,
That park's looking good, Jared.
thanks, sir. Appreciate that.
It's looking real good, so.
Our guys are doing a
Appreciate
good
all
job.
the volunteers too that helped out the community. I think there's churches and other organizations that have volunteered their time out there. I appreciate all their help.
Sir, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Board commissions and committees, Board of Adjustments, January 3rd, which has passed. Capital Improvements, January 16th. City Council, January 28th, February 11th. And Planning and Zoning, January 21st. Do not have any old business. I'd like to move on to new business. Need a motion to have the first reading of Bill number 13-01.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Any abstentions? Motion carries.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri, imposing a sales tax for the purpose of providing revenues for the operation of the City of Republic Fire Department, calling an election in the City of Republic, Missouri on the question of imposing said sales tax, designating the time for holding said election, and authorizing and directing the city clerk to give notice to the county clerks of said election.
Thank you, Brenda. Welcome, Chief Compton, 50-year-old Chief Compton. Please give us the overview, sir.
I'd like to turn this over to the city administrator, whose name is on submitted by.
Well, somebody's name had to be on that, so I figured I would take it, and,
Do you have any
Dwayne-
questions, technical questions?
well, Dwayne's gonna have to add in some of the details, and this is one of those type of topics that, one, because of the timing, if an election or referendum were to be, in April, which would be the same time as a municipal election, the timing is such that we have to have it to the county by January 22nd. So that would require the city council to not just have the first read tonight, but have an emergency second read in order to give us the time to get it certified enough to the county to place on the ballot. There are other dates available. If this date isn't acceptable, there would be another date in August that would be available for an election. That would more than likely be a standalone election with nothing else on the ballot, would be my best guess, and there would be just one thing, which would be a referendum. And then there would be the regular ordinary, November election date that would also be available for placement of a referendum. So those are the dates. Those were the things that we looked at this year to try to figure out if a referendum was appropriate. Those were the dates that would be available to run it. Now onto the topic. The fire department, obviously, we operate 2 full-time stations. Our equipment, I think you've all seen the list of equipment that we have. We've got 2 beautiful stations. We've got a well-qualified and well-trained staff. However, our equipment is aging and aging quickly, and we don't go a month without having some sort of a maintenance issue on one piece of equipment or another, and it does come month after month after month. The average age of all of our equipment, if you take out the admin vehicles, is just slightly over 20 years. Some of our equipment gets up to the 20 or the 30-year plus bracket. At some point in time, these pieces of equipment are going to go way past their usefulness, and we're going to have to replace those. When Councilmember Grooms took a look at this, and the Capital Improvements Committee, trying to figure out how can we handle these short-term, medium, and long-term needs, we had to identify some sort of a revenue source. There are not a whole lot of options when it comes to fire operations. Currently, it's funded through general fund revenue. It does have one small dedicated cigarette tax as a revenue source, but that amounts to about $34,000 per year. The 2 trucks that we've already put in an order for are $758,000, I believe, is what the cost of those 2 trucks are going to be. The aerial trucks would be the next in line for replacement. Those are in the neighborhood of $600,000 to $800,000, depending on the type of truck and the equipment that you would put on it. And then behind that, there's also some tanker trucks that would need to be replaced. So when you look at it, we've got a steady line of equipment that needs to be replaced. If we don't have a dedicated source of revenue, we have to look for general fund to support all of these purchases. So that's where the idea came from. That's where we started to take a look at what a referendum, if it were available, and what would be the options to do it. There is a availability of up to a quarter cent that is allowed for fire operations. Of course, what's in front of council is actually 2 options. Both would be a 1/8 cent sales tax. We have an option in there for, the original was for a 10-year sunset. That would generate enough money to get us through the 2 pumpers or engine trucks, and the 2 aerial ladder trucks would be enough to fund those pieces of equipment. That 10 years would take us out to obviously 2023 when that would expire. When we looked at that later or last week rather, we realized that we have 3 other sales taxes that are also coming to an end, sunsetting at that same time period. We've got a quarter cent sales tax for Aquatic Center that expires in 2023. We've got a quarter cent for the Recreation Center that expires in 2022. And then we've got a 1/4 cent sales tax for stormwater that, if we keep on the same 5-year progression, would expire in 2022. So as an option, we put out a 15-year option that would take us past all of that, so they wouldn't all expire at one same time, and the city may have to go back and ask the people for approval on 4 different referendums in a 6 to 9 month period. So that's the reason why you see 2 different referendum proposals, 10-year and 15-year. They're both 8 cents. I can get into some of the reasons why it's being proposed. I've also provided everybody with, just after I've heard some of the questions over the last week and even today, I put together a little quick snapshot of what some of the other sales tax rates are in some of the other immediate areas, what a cost of election would be if we did not include it in on the April municipal election, and then what type of sales taxes are available to a city, and that information is available. I'll leave it up to Dwayne. He's also put it on your desk. More of a picture tells a story, gives you a picture of all of the equipment, and gives you a description of their age and why they would need to be replaced, and I'll leave that up to you, Dwayne.
As you know, we ordered the 2 engines along with Springfield and Nixon Fire Protection District, and we saved about $60,000 because we went in with the consortium and ordered equipment the same as theirs. We're scheduled for delivery on those trucks right around June 6th. That's about, when we originally placed the order, that's about right at 365 days, so our year has flown by pretty quick. Those 2 trucks will be replaced. On this plan here, you'll notice the 95 Freightliner and the 78 Pierce will be sold off. We actually have some people interested in the Freightliner, haven't had any bites on the Pierce. Don't know why. The 91 engine that's we're currently running, we'll put that in as a reserve truck, and then that gets us down to replacing the 2 aerials. Because of the way Republic is spread out in the distance and the height of the building, ISO requires us to have 2 aerial trucks in town, so that's why we have those. We would go back with a 70-foot or 75-foot or 77-foot straight stick like the ladder on the left, And then the platform truck on the right, we would go back, those are pretty much a general plain Jane trucks, 100 foot now, they don't make them, or 102, that's pretty much a standard length on those. Depending on how this works out, in discussions with staff has been that if we were lucky to get the tax passed, we would like to pay off the 3 engines and be debt-free with that, and then start with these 2 aerials. We're looking on these 2 aerials, a year and a half build time. So the bid spec process would probably start in about a year and a half from now. Go to bid, and I've already been polling neighboring fire departments, and Springfield's in the market for some aerials. We may try to wait, depending upon how things are doing maintenance-wise, and try to go in on another consortium purchase type deal like we did with the engines to save money. As a side note, these 2 aerials, they failed their annual safety inspections this year. We had 16 deficiencies. And it's to the point now the trucks, with the weight and the age, we're having to repair the suspension on the trucks, and that was been the biggest thing. We've never had to get into the suspension, springs, bushings, sway bars, stuff like that, but the stuff is just wearing out with age. So we'd replace those, and then when you go to the 15-year plan, we will eventually replace the 84 Volvo tanker truck that we have in service now. The 91 Ford rescue truck, it would get replaced. Those 2 trucks, it's possible to remount those or just flat out replace them. As you can tell by what I've typed out there, if we remount the tanker truck, we'd save about $120,000 to remount it, about $200,000, $195,000 for a new one. The rescue truck, about $170,000 to remount it, and about $280,000 for a new one. The breathing air compressor, that's about 20 years, it's actually over 22 years old. Deputy Chief Hollingsworth told me it's 22 years old. We got a grant out there for that. We've been rejected once, and I really don't have a good feeling because we haven't heard anything back this year, but that's going to have to be changed out in the next 2 years, about a cost of $40,000. Go to the next page, there's radios. CU and FCC is mandating that we're going to change to a digital radio system. We were lucky enough to get a grant for the portable radios that take the brunt of abuse at the fire department. But we'll need to buy about 18 of those, about $45,000 there is what we're looking at. And then the ever-ending replacement of the breathing apparatus. We were lucky enough to get some of these in this year's budget, but we still have some that are going to need to be replaced as we go out. We're trying to stagger these or phase these in, like Councilman Grooms requested, so that we don't get hit with a big ticket item again all at once. Then when you get down to the bottom of that page, there's the 2 1984 tanker trucks. Again, we're required to have those to maintain our ISO 3 rating in the non-hydrated areas. Those 2 trucks are approaching 200,000 miles. They're kind of a lot like me. They look really good on the outside, but their inside's about half wore out.
Amen.
Dwayne, what was the year on those trucks?
Huh?
What was the year on those trucks?
94.
Okay, you said 84, you had 94.
Yeah, 94. Those are 94s. Then you get to the back page, and there's a replacement of 35 portable radios that we just got a grant for, and have gotten them. They'll be in service next week. They're being programmed today. And, you know, when you look at a 15-year plan, I put that in here, but it is the truth. These things have a life expectancy of 10 to 12 years. And when you look at it at the end of the 10 to 12-year period, right now, we're looking at $87,000 to replace those radios. These things take a beating. This is what we carry with us day in and day out. And the last item on the list there is fire station number 3. Republic continues to grow. We all know our census increase was 74% over the last 10 years. Even in the economic downturn last year, Gail's office did 79 building permits for new structures. And we run a record number of calls last year. I think it's 1,692 calls. We have never run that many calls. We're averaging 6 calls today. So far today we've run 7. Buy the land, down payment on the building. We'd like to dedicate $500,000 for that. We estimate the fire station would cost, based upon Station 2 that's pictured there, somewhere in the neighborhood of $2 million, maybe $2.2 million. We had 1.7 tied up in that in 2007.
Let me just get into a little more of the details, just to maybe save a couple of questions. But revenue, 8-cent sales tax over a 10-year period. Laura just reported that we're gonna probably be lucky to be flat this year. We projected, what we know our revenue is today over a 10-year period. If you get a 2% growth rate, which would be, we would take that every day if we could get it. We probably would be 2.4, 2.5 million, somewhere in that range. It's hard to say exactly what it would be. Over a 15-year period, it could ramp up to, 3,800,000, maybe 900,000 if things were to really go very well. I don't want to sit here and try to advocate one way or the other, except for, of all of the different departments, this is the one area that the vehicles are extremely expensive. As the city gets larger, as we get more businesses in, the need for the equipment for the fire department is not going to go away. These vehicles are not going to get any younger than they are. Somehow, some way, we've got to come up with a revenue source that's going to be able to keep our department with good, solid, working equipment. Whether this is the right way or not, it's for council to decide, but this was an option that was, brought to the table, did the research, and of course, it's here tonight is something for council to consider.
Please note that the list I give you is not all inclusive, because there's a couple of other ticket items that I had left off there inadvertently, so. It has to do with automatic defibrillators. Their life expectancy is gonna run out about 2016. That'll be probably about $12,000 to replace those. And then there's another set of Jaws of Life. We were lucky enough to get a set in last year's budget, but we got another set that's gonna hit the 20-year-old mark in about 2016 as well. This is a vicious, never-ending cycle.
Any more on the overview? Questions, comments, discussion from council. Mr. Clinkenbeard, I think you had your hand first.
Quick question, or maybe follow-ups, but you have a 10 and 15-year option. Do we have to have a sunset option? Is that required? So could it be open? The follow-up with that then is that it's like he's stating, it's a never-ending thing. Fire department's one area that does not have a dedicated revenue stream. All of these things he's listing over the next 15 years, you get to year 16, you're back to the number one, you're buying stuff again. I mean, it's not going to get any better. Even at 100 homes a year, we're at 1,500 more homes over, maybe 3,000 if you do the 200 homes a year. So we need more equipment and a bigger building. I mean, it's going to constantly grow. It's something that the city, it's not like the fire department's going to sunset at some point, or we don't need a fire department at some point. So I don't see why we would want to stop, that revenue stream. We're always going to need it there, and it's not like some of the other sources that we have that have a dedicated revenue stream. That would be one, what I would throw in there as an option, and not have the cap at the end or sunset.
Sure.
Casagrande. It's hard to pronounce. It's been a couple months.
Marty, you look
I do. I actually have many and sundry questions and points. But first, I was going to say that these are some large dollar amounts we're talking about. Extremely large percentages of our budget. Why didn't we discuss this before we decided to purchase our fire trucks back in October? That would be my first question. We knew we were spending $750,000. We should have figured out how we were going to pay for them beforehand.
Well, we did. We did talk about that, and we did have the revenue identified as to how we would pay that, because there has been some debt that has gone away. We did have the sales tax revenue, or the cigarette tax revenue to rely on. So we did have the revenue source, and we did bring the option to council of 1 or 2 trucks at that particular time, and it was discussed. So those 2 vehicles are all reasons. We have the money, available, and we have the revenue identified to pay for the lease purchase agreements for those vehicles. It's beyond that has become the problem, and the sales tax, of course, could absorb that and help accelerate maybe some of the other purchases and other needs.
So, the money's there for the first 2 trucks, we're good to go, which I was assured when we did that bill. So really that leaves the remainder of the equipment and supplies, so then why the rush? We're good, we don't have to place the order on the others for another year and a half. Why do we have to do the first read and the second read tonight? And this is just me personally and talking to Shane, it's just reflect me. I didn't know about this until I opened up my packet last night. I opened it up and I see that we're being asked to raise taxes, or send it to the voters to raise taxes. This should be a much more deliberate process. I don't know why we would take something that is so huge and rush it on a first and second read, emergency read tonight.
If you want to be on the April election, there is no choice but to do it tonight. If the council would like to make that decision, that's why we put the other dates out there as options. It was not to advocate any one particular date, it was to say, here are your available dates. If you would like to do it in April, when it's a municipal election and the costs for an election are at the lowest level, tonight's the night that you have to do it, unfortunately. There's no other options unless you would like to call a special meeting.
Just as a rhetorical statement, I'll say that then if it needed to go on the April ballot, then it should have been talked about months ago. But that's just rhetorical, and I'm not really looking for a response.
I do have to give a response, though, because this was brought to our attention by a council member in November, and staff has done the research to bring it forward today.
Okay.
So it's not been sat on, it's not been withheld from city council, which is the opinion that I'm getting from you.
Not at all.
And I do take offense to that.
Not at all, and I apologize that that's how that was interpreted. However, it is hard to have a deliberate discussion and debate on this on such a huge percentage of our budget when it's kind of thrown on us, and we're going to be voting on this in, another 5-10 minutes on a very large amount of our budget for the next many years. Then that kind of leads into the next, segues into the next question, why go with the municipal election? The percentage for a municipal election turnout, while cheaper, is much lower than a general election that might be in November, and we're going to get a better feel with the larger electorate that might be showing up for a November election than we would be for an April election.
Your elections are gonna be your elections, people come out whether they wanna come out or not. So, your percentage-wise,
Yeah, your percentage will be higher in November than it will be in April.
maybe not.
I think not this year.
It's not a presidential.
It's an off-year election.
Look
In August, there's
at your
nothing.
data, even still, it'll end up being higher.
Jim, could you tell them, you have to wait 2 quarters is the other thing, from the time that whenever it's passed. Like if it's passed in April, we can't start collecting till October 1st. If we wait till, let's say it's November election, then it would be the following, April that we'd be able to start. So we'd be over a year out before we'd be able to collect that.
I mean, I can't, Laura can probably repeat the language, but I can't repeat how that language works, except that it does extend 2 quarters out to the first day of the second quarter past the election, I believe is how the language reads. So April would take it to October 1st, August would take it, I believe, to January 1st, and then November would take it to April 1st, for the date of being able to actually start collecting revenue.
Just to summarize, I personally cannot vote for this. I am not against an expanded, send it out for referendum to the voters for increasing tax to get the fire trucks that we need, the equipment we need. But I think it needs to be a more deliberate process, and the trucks that we've bought, we've taken care of that, so let's look at going forward. And this speaks to what I was talking about at our last meeting about, looking further out rather than just reacting to whatever comes up on the docket in that particular meeting. So that's my point, and that's where I stand.
Mr. Hart?
What's it costing us to put this on the ballot for April?
We don't have a precise cost. The cost to do the stormwater sales tax that we ran standalone back in February, I believe it was, with Christian County, I think it was around $8,200. David just flashed me 7, but maybe that was 8. Yeah, it was about $8,200. I believe because we're already doing an election, I think the cost would be minimal. I think it would probably be less than $1,000.
Oh, okay. So by putting it on in April, we're gonna save
A lot of money.
$6,000, $7,000.
and for whatever reason, and I hate to even try to guess, November elections, when we looked at something for this last November, the presidential election, I don't remember what that was. It was an enormous number that they gave us, and only can assume because of the presidential election that one made that one go so high. So this November would probably be a lower expense as well, but we just don't know what that number would be.
Looking beard.
Just so Marty doesn't take all the arrows, I got this information this morning as well. I have his same feelings, is that something this large and this important, I mean, we took a year and a half on trash. Here we are, 8 hours, and I'm going to vote on $2.2 million. If I was just voting on an expenditure today, it would be a no easily, because I didn't have enough time to review this. I believe that there should be a steady revenue stream for the fire department, and I'm personally not voting for this. We're sending it to the people to vote for, and so I'm kind of on the fence at this point, but I am kind of disappointed at how I got the information. Nothing against the gathering needs or anything, but to push this fast just so we can make April is, I don't think that's what the people want us to be here for. I mean, it just doesn't feel right.
When did you pick up your packet?
I got my packet on Friday.
Those were ready on Thursday. Then I'm gonna chastise the entire council. Those packets are ready on Thursday. So I don't wanna hear any more about it. I don't have 8 hours. You guys had days to look at this. So don't use that as an excuse. You either know it or you don't.
I'll take that back. I read the packet, but we only had 8 hours today to speak to individuals that had answers to the question.
I understand that, but you had Friday as
And
well.
even over a weekend, we're talking about something going on about.
Mr. Clinkenbeard, no more discussion on that. You guys had time, enough. Now, back to your questions. I have no issue with, if you wanna offer to table it, then you make a motion to table it, and you make a motion to table it to look at it on another agenda, or you can go through a first read, and when it comes up, if somebody wants to make a motion to emergency read, which has been requested, you can vote that down and not go to a second read, and the second read could come up at the last meeting in January, which would allow you to, which would also push it into August.
Yep.
Which would push the vote in for the election into August. So that's where you are. Okay? It's here. So if you wanna do it April, do it April. If you want to do it August, do it August. If you don't want to do it at all, that comes up on the second reading. Okay? So I want to make sure everybody understands where we are. Mr. Harder, you had a question?
Well, it's not a question, just a comment. This is just actually just to put it on the ballot. It's still gonna come to the people for the vote anyway. And that will give them, the rest of January, February, March, and April to question council, to question the mayor, to question Dwayne, whatever your name is. You're so old, I forgot your name. Again, this is just to put it on the ballot to let the questions come out. It's for the people to vote on. All we're voting for is to put it on the ballot.
Yeah, and you're not voting tonight unless you want to do a second read emergency. Ms. Poole?
Well, isn't it a normal thing that we get more people to vote in the April ballot than we do any of the others?
Mr. Casagrand's point,
I think more people vote in the April election than any of the others.
If there's an August primary or if there's a presidential election, in this particular year, April and November will probably be very close. August would probably be lower.
I don't agree with you, I'm sorry.
No, that's correct. It's a good question, Ms. Poole. And to Mr. Casagrand's point, there's not an answer unless you want to go down the registrar to tell you what the voter turnout is, but it depends on, again, what's on the ballot, time of year, and everything else goes along with that. Mr. Grooms?
To Mr. Harder's point, and kind of twisting that to answer everybody's question here, I understand, you're looking at this as we're voting on 2.3 million to 3.8 million. In fact, we're voting on $1,000 to $8,000, April election versus August election, whatever. Yeah, there were a couple of people who I didn't get an opportunity to speak to, and I'll take the hit on that. That's my fault. I told Jim that I was gonna try to get to everybody, and I missed a couple of you. It was not intentional, although, I don't really like talking to Marty that much.
Few people do. The Ward 3 thing.
It's a Ward 3 thing, yeah. No, but, I did kind of start this thing forward. I don't have a particular axe to grind, whether it's April or August, doesn't make too much of a difference to me. As far as the 2 trucks that have already been purchased, as Jim said, that money was there, it is there. Those can be handled. I think that this is a better way to do it than what we're doing now. We did what we're doing because that's all we had. We discovered this after the fact, and if this can be used instead of that, I think that we as a city as a whole will be better off. If we don't want to make a final decision tonight, I'm not gonna stomp out of here angry. But it's here tonight because we were trying to make April, and those who didn't hear about it, that was my fault. I tried to, at least touch base with everybody, kind of let them know what the idea was, and I missed a couple of people.
To ask the question then, the money, the payments on the 750, the 8,000 that is there for the trucks that we approved, has been approved in the budget, the 2013 budget that we've already looked at and approved. What happens to that money in the general fund then? Is it just a slush fund that we can do with whatever we wish, or where does that money go?
It's targeted toward those trucks.
Well, then if we're doing the tax though, then we've got extra money.
Okay, I think we're talking about 2 things. The trucks that you're talking about, Mr. Casagran, are already in place to replace vehicles we already currently have. Okay. His 10-year and his 15-year plan, the vehicles that we're supposed to replace with the 2 new ones, are they in here that we're taking out?
Yeah, they're in there, because what it boils down to is how long do we want to finance those 2 new engines? That's what the short of the.
We'll be able to pay them off much quicker.
We'll be able to pay, with this, we'll pay them off in about a 3-year period, maybe 3.5, depending on the interest. The path we're headed down,
10-year at least.
10 to 15 years. So at the end of the 15 years, guess what? It's time to start all over again.
And that is a really good point that Mr. Klinkenbeard brought up, is why don't we stagger these purchases? Why do we do 2 at a time? Why don't we do 1 every 4 years, 1 every 5 years, something like that, instead of hitting the city with these mammoths? It looks like apparently the apocalypse strikes 2022, 2023. Apparently all hell breaks loose.
The reason why we have gone to the secondary market to buy everything we currently have. We haven't bought anything new since 1995. And we went with the 2 new engines because of the cost savings, at a $60,000 cost savings. That was, for sure, 1 year's payment, probably another 6 months payment. And the 2 trucks, in theory, even though they are purchased at the exact same time, depending upon call volume and usage, I seriously doubt if they both wear out at the exact same time. The truck at Station 2 won't have as many runs on it as a truck at Station 1 will. But that could change depending on growth patterns. I really don't know. But we should be able to get some extra life out of those. But as it stands now, the cigarette tax that's coming in will help offset that debt on that payment.
That answer the question, Mr. Casagran?
It did, to the extent of what I was talking about with the staggering of the purchase. It does not answer the question to the extent of the general fund money that will be freed up because of the tax levy. There are needs within all of the departments. Public Works has a dedicated revenue source when it comes to their water and sewer accounts, their transportation accounts, their stormwater accounts. They have their own dedicated revenue. Parks has their own dedicated revenues. They have sales tax here in the city. They have sales tax that they get from the county as well, and then now, of course, they have their program fees. So they're pretty much a self-sustaining operation as well. But everything else would fall under the general fund. Police department, they don't have the large equipment needs that the fire department does, but they have more continuous needs. You know, their vehicles will wear out much quicker. As we grow, we are also going to have, capital is also people. We've been running understaffed for quite some time in each and every department. At some point in time, as the city grows again, we are going to be in the need of additional people. So there are other needs. It's not a slush fund. It is a fund that is used to operate and manage this city. And to refer to it as a slush fund is just, it's not fair. This city operates very well. We have said since the very beginning, a lot of this debt that we have, we've assumed. All of us here have assumed that debt. 2002, this city did a lot of construction, a lot of building, a lot of very good building, a lot of very good infrastructure work. But right now, we are saddled with that debt. When Pete was here, Pete would sit there and say the biggest obstacle the city has is the amount of debt that we have. We are in a position now, thankfully, I will toot Laura's horn, we are now starting to manage these debts. Maybe the timing wasn't so great with bringing this forward with a short amount of time, but it doesn't take away the fact that we need to do something to look at other revenue sources. Our sales tax revenue is flat. Even if we built a new Target store tomorrow, we're not going to see revenue until 2015. We don't have the options of being able to generate additional property taxes. We are trying to put together a long-term plan for this city, and we're trying to come up with options. And I'm sorry that this came at such a late date or time, but you know, it came to us late. It was the holidays. We put together the information, tried to get it out as quickly as possible. And whether or not it's now or in August or November, we'll manage. We will manage and do our very best, and we will be fine. It's just a matter of something needs to be done at some point in time.
Mr. Krischke, Mr. Mayor, I clearly you're taking this, that I'm meaning this personally, and I am absolutely personally not.
Well, I don't mind, Mr. Casper, I just don't like to use some of the terms.
Okay.
I'm just going to be upfront with it.
Okay.
The terms you guys are using, you know, and Jim takes offense to it because just for the fact that the city is well run. It's probably one of the best well-run cities in Southwest Missouri, if not the best. And I understand, Mr. Casper. I guess the point is that.
What term would you prefer, Mr. Mayor?
The slush fund's not going to work, but just where you
freed up in the general budget for the 2013.
Ask where is the money going to be used for?
I did. And we approved the 2013 budget just a few weeks ago, and now a large chunk of that money is going to be freed up for 2013. Where is that money going to go?
He just told you.
Hang on. Well, first of all, if we did it in April, it's not going to get collected till October the 1st. So we only have 3 months at the end of the year that money would be collected. So it's not all of the 2013 budget. In fact, the budget year goes through October 1, correct? Or is it, I guess it's January 1 now.
We are at January 1st.
January 1st. But, so it'd only be a couple of months. It wouldn't really affect anything until the 2014 budget. No.
Could I remind everybody something? This council is in charge of the budget. Jim or Laura can't do something and change where it's going without bringing a budget adjustment back to you. So the slush fund is going to be controlled by the city council, okay?
You guys will control it. So, with that said, regardless of where it goes, it'll become, and Ron's right, it'll come back to you for a budget adjustment. So, I mean, he brought it back to, that's where it's going to be. So, you guys will be able to decide. Mr. Hardy, you had your hand up, so.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump on you for just a second again. The time frame was pretty quick. I think getting all this information together, the time frame you did, you'd be commended on that. Back to Jeff Klinkenbeard, with the sunshine. I kinda like that ad with the no sunshine to keep it on, because it's not gonna, fire department's never gonna go away.
No.
But I was kind of thinking about numbers in my head. You're talking about an eighth of a cent. Could we maybe do a 16th of a cent and keep it on forever? Would that do any good for anybody, or are you looking for more upfront? I mean, this just.
I think it's 8 cent intervals. I don't believe
Yeah,
you
you
can cut it
can't
to
go-
16.
okay.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay, well,
Which rate?
We came up to 316 at one point.
But I like the idea that,
No sunset.
because it's not gonna go away, this is never gonna go away. City of Republic's gonna continue to grow, and the fire department's gonna continue to need the support. So I don't know, it's just something.
And let me just,
Can Shane answer that point? I mean, did they talk or discuss about that on your
Yes.
committee about what, choosing 10-15 or not sunshining?
Well, the whole idea behind the sunset, whether it's a 10-year or a 15-year sunset, is this we're looking at this money for very specific purposes. And with a 10-year or a 15-year sunset, depending on which direction you all decide to go, that says in 10 years, let's just say 10 years, in 10 years, it's got to go back out to the citizens of the Republic and say, did we do with your money what we said we would do? And if we didn't, then tell us no.
Okay, very good, thank you.
same thing we do with the storm revenue.
Thank you.
Because it's on 5 years, we had a chance to do a 10-year or a non-sunsettable stormwater. We chose to continue to do a 5-year, present a 5-year just for that very fact, because there's gonna be, in the future, it's on here as our stormwater usage, as we develop, our stormwater usage is gonna be greater and greater, just as well as our sewer plant and everything else that goes along with that. So, with that said, again, you're looking at 10-year, it's listed as it's listed. If you guys wanna discuss and put it off, that's whatever you guys wanna do, but it's listed here as, I think it was a 10-year, correct?
With a substitute for a 15.
So we need to make a motion for the 15?
Hold on a second, I'll be right there, right next to you.
I think I'll put in my 2 cents worth on this. Now, this is something that's needed for the fire department. We all know that. It's 1/8 of a cent, and it's set in 10 or 15 years depending. What's all the, for want of a better word, hullabaloo about anyway?
I'm not sure.
It's my thought.
All right, Laura, you had
No,
something,
I did, I just wanted to reiterate, because, you know, I stand up here every month, show you the financials, where we are, always point out the general fund, the other funds, you know, it's good. So I always point out the dire straits of the general fund. And right now, when you look at the financial statements, it's 1.4 million expenditures over the revenues. So I'm kind of at a loss to see where we have that excess money that we would put away into a special, I'm not gonna call the other thing else, into a special place. And so,
Your pro forma
so
one,
where
let's
would,
use that.
you know, I always try to stay optimistic that we're going to meet, you know, exceed our expenditures, and so, I try to stay hopeful every time, but it is clearly right there in the financial statement where our position is, so, anyway, I just wanted to put that.
Council, I've got a question for you. For those of you who need more time to look at it, how much more time would you like to have? Because it is a first read, no vote. If it goes, I mean, I control the agenda. If you guys wanna push it off to the 28th or first meeting in February, how much time would you like to have? I'm open to that, cause I can move it off as long as you want, or you can vote on emergency read tonight, or however you guys wanna do it. Emergency read has been requested, so I will take a motion for that, just to let you know, and a vote for that. If it doesn't pass, then it's pushed off, but I need to know how much time you're asking for, so when we build the next agenda, I will know. Ms. Poole?
What would that change?
The only thing, if the second read doesn't pass tonight, then it's pushed off to August. If it passes,
That's not what I mean.
Change the dollar amount.
If we put it
Oh.
off
dollar amount.
past April and take it to August, what's it gonna change?
I think
$6,000.
I think Mr. Grooms pointed that out. He said between 1,000 to 8,000,
Yeah.
basically what you're, I think is what you said?
It's a lot more money to put it on
It is.
a separate ballot. And I think that's us spending money foolishly if we can do it on April and get it done and over with. If we're gonna do it, let's do it. And if we're not gonna do it, tell somebody.
Say no.
It goes to the people anyway,
We're not,
we're just putting it on the ballot.
we're not deciding how.
Well, and to Mr. Casagran's point, though, it is a tax that will increase up to 7.85 for where we are right now. So, to his point, and Mr. Funkenbear's point, we need to be diligent with our tax dollars, to your point, Ms. Poole, on one end of spending, and at the same time of using our tax money wisely for the citizens. So, you're caught in a quandary. If you need more time, that's fine, but if you don't, that's fine. That's where you're at. Just
But
letting
what
you
I'm
know.
getting at is if we're gonna do it, what will 2 months, 3 months, a year make a difference in us doing it? I can't see where,
And
that would be beneficial. That's my opinion.
Mr. Peckenberg, go ahead, sir.
Because I was one of the ones that threw out the lack of time. On this particular issue, I'm ready to go, mainly because it's needed and it's not as difficult, especially when the people get to vote on it. In the future, and I know you've preached a lot on this, Mr. Mayor, is on the capital, putting together a capital improvement plan on all the big things that we have coming down the road. It would be nice in the future to have a little bit more heads up on things coming forward, and I know that when that plan was put together and the staff put all the stuff to get this to a point where we can vote on it tonight, a lot of work was done, and I understand that. It's not to degrade them in any way. It's just kind of disappointing when we're over, having to make this vote, and there's a lot involved. That I want to make sure the people I represent know that I consider things thoroughly.
I know you do, Mr. Peckenberg, and I appreciate that, and I agree with you. As far as the capital improvements plan, that particular, let's just look at the capital improvements plan that you brought up. If you look at our capital improvements, whether it's stormwater, or whether it's police cars, or whether it's fire vehicles, or whether it's roads, or whether it's parks, since park has their own money, but if you look at our capital improvements, the majority of those larger ticket items are going to be fire department. They really are. If you look at our capital improvements plan, capital improvements, even our capital improvements priority list over the last 3 or 4 years, Chief Compton's probably got, I'd say 4 out of the top 5, 4 out of the top 7 every single time.
That's why I say this is easy because the revenue stream, they gotta have it.
It is, but to your point, this will also go back and allow us to go back to those items on the capital improvements plan. That money that's not associated with this particular item in the general fund, we were able to go back to the capital improvements plan and apply those dollars as needed during that particular session as well. So, and those required budgets, and you guys will be able to vote on those budgets as well. But just kind of letting you know, I agree with you. But as far as the capital improvements plan, it'll free up some of that stuff. Not that Dwayne won't have anything on there. He may have something else on there that's not covered. We don't know. Yeah, Chief Compton's very good at finding things,
Sure is.
on budget, so just letting you know that I agree with you, and that goes back to what Mr. Casagrande was saying, his point's well taken, that we have to apply that money somewhere, go back to the capital improvements plan and see what we've got left, or see what we else. Ms. Poole, go ahead, and then I'll Ms. Harris.
I'm sorry.
You're first, Ms. Poole, go ahead.
I just call for the question.
Oh,
I think we've discussed it enough.
That's what she was trying to do.
Can I make a motion?
Actually, there is no question on the floor. Where you're
I
at
think we need
is the
Get
mayor,
on with it.
well, the mayor is in control of the meeting. And if he wants to get on with it, then he can get on with it.
Okay, Kathy.
May I make a motion, Mr.
Hold on,
Mayor?
not yet. Let's go.
Now, Kathy, quick.
Gotta get it.
Better get it in.
I just wanted to make a point. When we discussed our budget for 2013, correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, it's been a little while since I looked at this. We did not put $758,000 for these trucks in that budget. We put 1 year's worth of the debt payment in there. So we'll have that 1 year's worth of the debt payment. What this will do is allow us to pay it off quicker, so we don't have to have that 1 year next year and the year after and for the next 15 years. So we're not talking about having an extra $758,000 laying around, which, believe me, it wouldn't lay long. I mean, we need money.
If in any way that was the thought that I thought, that is not.
Like I was getting ready to say, I think Mr. Casagrande's point was, where's the application of the funding that you say? That first payment, where's that funding saved? And I think hopefully we've answered that we can go back capital improvements and go from there. Who is mine next?
I was gonna get a motion whenever you're ready, sir.
I'm sorry.
Ms. Poole, on a second read, you can do that all night. Are there other questions, Council? We discuss this, but I wanna make sure that we're all on the same page, we're all on the same, following the same procedure out of the same book, where we are as a first read. It's been requested for an April election for an emergency read. As far as that goes, it'll be up to council, to decide. It has been requested, however, at this particular point, I'm asking for other questions, other comments, other discussion before we move forward with that, because I am obligated under the request to honor that particular request for an emergency read, but I wanna make sure we have all of our questions answered and all our comments made. You guys have certainly, I wanna make sure, understand that, your comments are well taken, your conversation, your discussion is excellent. Sometimes, you know, we just wanna make sure that we have all our bases covered and the questions you're asking are good, whether it's about the financing, whether it's about the long-term use, whether it's about whatever it is, we wanna make sure we got all our bases covered. You guys are doing a good job of that, but I wanna make sure we have time for any other questions, comments. Mr. Shears, please go, sir.
Just real short, we've discussed this several times, it's kinda gone around the table 2 or 3 times. But we're not voting for an expenditure of money. We're only voting for the people to have a choice on if we do this or not. So I don't think we take it too personal that it's money out of our pocket, it's not. It's a chance for the voter to make a decision on something that I personally feel the city needs.
Yeah, that's a good point. And to follow up on your comment, at this particular time, that's where you guys are as a council. As Ms. Poole and Mr. Casagran have stated, and you all have stated, we need to be good stewards of the taxpayers' money, whether it's April, whether it's August, or whether it's an eighth of a cent, you know. So, we always have to be better stewards of the taxpayers' dollars than we were before. You guys do a certainly good job of that. No matter how the question's phrased or how it's asked. I mean, I honestly, I got your point, it's okay. Okay, other questions? Other questions, go ahead.
I really want to make sure that we're clear on the purchase of the vehicle. When you look at the budget, if anybody were to go back and look at the budget, they're going to see a line item that will show $750,000 or $758,000, which would take their fire department budget to $2.2 million. Now, it's really an accounting entry, so Councilmember Harrelson is exactly right. It's money in, and then we get the lease payment, and then it's money back out again. And then, so it does show in the budget, the actual fire department budget is $2.2 million. In reality, it's more like $1.5 million is what their annual budget is. But because we did add the purchase of these vehicles into their budget, because it just goes back out again, then the payment, just as was described, happens. So we've got those identified. But I just want to make sure if anybody goes back in, they're not coming back to one of us saying, you have the money right here in the budget. I don't want anybody thinking that we, you know, are double dipping somehow, I guess.
I would like to make one further clarification for council and staff. If you read the ballot language as it is written, shall the Republic of Missouri impose a sales tax at the rate of 8.18 cents to be collected for a period of 10 or 15 years, or whatever you decide, beginning in October or January, for the purpose of providing revenues for the operation of the City of Republic Fire Department. That is statutory state language. We cannot change that. That statutory language. Now, it says for the operation. That does not, for us anyway, for our collection, that means for vehicles based on this plan. It's not for anything else. Everything else, salaries, everything else, that still comes out of the general revenue fund. This is for vehicles only.
I don't think it's for vehicles only, is it?
Well, it's apparatus.
Equipment.
Equipment. Okay. Equipment, okay. I'm
Not
sorry.
for salary.
You are correct. It is not for,
Not for personnel.
It's not for personnel.
Okay.
It's strictly for equipment.
Okay.
Strictly for equipment. However, the ballot language does not read that, because the ballot language, whether you use this ballot language here, or you substitute St. Louis, Jeff City, the ballot language stays the same no matter what municipality you're in. It's a state language. Is that correct, sir?
State statute
State
sets out the
statute.
ballot language.
It sets up the ballot language for this type of tax. Does that make sense? So I just want everybody to be clear on that, so we're not, somebody might say, well, it doesn't say for this, or it doesn't say for that. This is how it's supposed to read, based on what the state has provided and said this is what you will do. So, we're following that. Now, that clarification, I want to make sure everybody understands. Is there any questions on that, or is there any other discussion or question? As in, always look every one of you in the eye, so. I do, you guys notice, I'll go right around the room, look at you. Okay, Mr. Quakerbeard, you had a question.
I was gonna, well, I'll ask Ron first, can we motion on the years before the second read, or do we need the second read and then change it, or does it matter?
Yeah, I'd go ahead and do the emergency and do the, second read, and then during the motion and second for the and then the discussion is when you would make the motion to pick either
The years and that type of
10
thing.
years
Or
or
what my
10 year
motion
bill.
was gonna be for, so.
Thanks. That's a good question. Other questions, comments, or discussion? I would like to say we do have, as a council and staff, as you can tell, we are very passionate about what we do. We are very passionate about our tax dollars. We are very passionate about our fire department, our police department, all our departments. And it shows sometimes, but I do appreciate it, because it does show that you care. If we didn't care, this would have been carte blanche and went right on through, but you guys do care. We want to make sure we're good stewards, and I appreciate that. So, nothing personal with that, so. Okay.
Oh, it's personal.
Yard job.
Telling you like his beard.
I can't grow hair on my head, but I can grow it on my face all day long. Okay, with that, there's no other discussion on the first read or questions on the first read. Then it's been requested that we have an emergency reading. I need a motion and a second for emergency reading. A motion?
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion, second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Any abstentions?
I'll abstain.
Fair enough. Yes, sir?
Since it is an emergency read, it has to pass by 2/3 vote.
Okay. Fair enough. The motion and second for emergency reading has passed 7-0-1. On to second reading. Need a motion to have the second reading of bill number 13-01.
Motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Any abstentions?
I abstain.
Motion carries 7-0-1.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri, imposing a sales tax for the purpose of providing revenues for the operation of the City of Republic, Missouri. I'm sorry. Revenues for the operation of the City of Republic Fire Department, calling an election in the City of Republic, Missouri, on the question of imposing said sales tax, designating the time for holding said election, and authorizing and directing the city clerk to give notice to the county clerks of said election.
Need a motion to have final passage of bill number 13-01.
Motion.
Second.
Mr. Thompson, Mr. Krischke, would you like to give the overview again, sir?
I don't know if we want to go through the overview again, but I do want to echo what the mayor had said. I mean, whether you're a city council member, whether you're somebody who lives in town, or whether you staff member working here at the city, we all take our job seriously, and you know, I'm gonna, you know, hopefully, you know, do what's very best for the city each and every time, and I do not like that this came to the council late as it was. I mean, it is what it is, and I'm sorry that it did come to late. Shane and I worked hard on trying to get the information together. We probably could have gotten our communications, you know, a little bit better, but be it as it may, it's something that was brought forward, and it's something that council at least needed to hear, and that was our opinion, getting it to the city council to at least consider. But the facts are what they are. The decision is, of course, a council decision to make, but rest assured, no matter what we do, we're always looking to try to spend the city's dollars wisely. We don't ever want to, you know, break that trust. We want to make sure that people understand that we're not going to do anything foolish. We're going to really try to do what's the very best for this city. This is an option. If it doesn't work, and the residents were not to pass, or the council weren't to pass moving this forward, we will continue to find ways to operate and make sure we do the best thing for this city. So, don't ever want council to feel pressured into making a decision. They need to make a decision on what they think is the best thing to do. And I just want to make sure everyone knows that this was not deliberately brought forward to try to pressure council and make you be on the spot to make a decision. We just want to bring the information forward, so.
Chief Compton, would you like to add to that overview, sir?
Like in the plan I handed out there, when you look at that, whether it's the 10 or the 15-year plan that you guys choose, that's your decision. And I don't have a problem with either one of them. I'm grateful that we get the chance to ask the voters. But we're eventually going to buy everything on those 4 pages of pieces of paper there. Like I said before, we're in a vicious, never-ending cycle.
That's probably a minimum of what you know you need, correct?
Yeah, I've actually left a few things off of there. I mean, we didn't include any staff vehicles that, so.
I'd like to make a point too. The police department is also has been in the same boat with vehicles as well. We have a police department now on a rotating schedule with their vehicles. We had to get to a point where we're now got their maintenance figured out, where we're going to have a pretty much set schedule. We've been band-aiding our fire department vehicles for how many years?
Ever since I came here, like I said, we've never bought anything new.
So we're trying to get on a matrix where we do the same thing as we do with the police department. So,
Even the administration vehicles, we've gone to the secondary market to buy program cars.
yeah. You had a question, Mr. Casper?
I did. So it looks clear to me that it's going to pass, and I cannot in good conscience vote for it. However, what I will say is, again, I'm not against the fire department having the equipment it needs. I'm not, Mr. Fire Department hater. And I understand this stuff is extremely expensive.
Yes, it is.
Hey, I just want to be clear about that, because if my house was seriously hit, and then nobody comes to put it out.
Marty, you just gave Brady Bright more material than
So,
Front page,
something that I tried to express, and certainly not confrontationally, see if I can say this without making anyone upset. I tried to express that I have several issues with this as it's currently laid out, and I cannot vote for it the way it's laid out. However, something that would be palatable to me, and this is open for discussion, is if we go to the voters with a tax for the remainder above and beyond what we've already approved for purchase to cover all the additional equipment that we're looking at buying. And the frame of mind that I'm looking at this as, let's figure out how we're going to pay for it and then go buy it. And what we've done here is we bought it, and now we're going to go figure out how we're going to pay for it. At least, yes, we have. Yes, we have. We've got 2 fire trucks on the way coming here in June.
And those are taken care of whether this goes through or not. This is simply it's just like going out and refinancing your house to get a better interest rate. And that's what this would give us the opportunity to do.
It's actually a little more
change the financing of this and then take care of all those things in the future.
It's actually a little more unlike refinancing your house. It's actually like going out and getting a second job to pay for the bill, because you're getting another supplemental income revenue stream. Anyway, I just throw that out there that as it's written, I can't vote for it, but something that I would be in favor of is putting it to where the equipment above and beyond what we've already purchased is what goes in the referendum to the voters. That is just my opinion.
One quick question, Laura, has the financing already been done for the first 2 trucks?
Well, I put a memo together in June as to where the financing was going to come from before it was purchased. With the reserve monies that the fire department had, with the cigarette tax, with the decrease in the interest rate on a current OP that we have, that the interest rate dropped enough that we would have the money over the next 5 years, which would be half the time. And so we already laid out a plan before this was voted in by the council. So no, at April 1st, because he won't get possession of them until June. so.
3 months
So,
prior.
so in fact, basically, the loan hasn't been taken out at
Right,
this point.
exactly.
You
So we're-
search for,
Yeah.
We're
they won't-
essentially looking at a different vehicle right now,
Well,
is what I'm,
we
my
used,
point.
we used some of the money that were in reserves for the fire department that they had been building up and some other mechanisms to make those annual debt service payments.
we wouldn't go out 3 months prior to taking delivery is when you typically go out and look for your financing package. That would be about the same time that this election would be decided one way or the other if it were to occur. And then, of course, that may decide to go for a 3-year versus a 5 or a 7 or a 10, whatever that package may be. But typically, we talked about this the other day, 3 months prior to taking delivery is when we would go out and search for our best financing package.
Were this to pass in April, then what we've essentially done is provided ourselves with more options to find the best route.
As it stands now, what we have in the reserve fund, we won't have a reserve fund when it's all said and done, which is a scary factor because I know there was some discussion about that with this board. I mean, we'd like to have a little bit of a cushion in case we do get to break things, and we may have to have those things fixed and dip into that fund.
Let me clarify something. Mr. Casimir brought up an excellent point. We're at the point now of voting to either go or not go. The application of it says operation of the fire department. Anything that comes back to council on a budget amendment has to be voted on by you. So Mr. Casgraham's point is well made, that it'll give a council time, if it passes, to discuss the options of how you want to apply it. Does that make sense? Because in 6 months or 5 months or whatever, you as council might want to say, you know what? It's a good point. Maybe we pay off one of them, keep the other one on, save us money, and then go out and get another piece of equipment. You know, you see what I mean? So the application of it comes at a later date.
We're starting a revenue stream, and then when that stream's coming in, council still has to decide how we apply that
Still has to-
money.
You want to have
So if you don't wanna apply it to those things we've already purchased, that's something that could be discussed when we decide where that money will be applied.
But, and to his point though, we definitely have to have that discussion on it now for the planning purposes later. So,
Sure.
it's a well brought up point. I wanna make sure that's clear. Does that make sense? Because as we apply it in the budget process, as we apply it, as we walk through our process of applying money, tax money or whatever it may be in general fund, that has to come back here because it's already been budgeted as this. It has to come back to us. If it passes by the voters, it still has to come back of how they apply it. So then it comes back to you. Yeah, it still has to pass. It still comes back to you as how do you want to apply it. That's when that discussion as far as how to apply it takes place. It has to happen now so you guys have a good understanding of how you want to think about it and how you want to apply it in the future. But it says for operations, we're designating toward vehicles, designating toward equipment. Does that make sense? So it's an excellent point. Other discussion, questions, comments? You want to add anything, Chief, to the overview? I mean,
No.
His minions are headed to my house right now, I gotta have to go.
no, they're not.
You know, I see Marty at the gym every morning at 5 a.m. and I'm really wishing I'd been standing here an hour. I wished I hadn't went to 4 miles on the tractor this morning.
Nice. Okay. Mr. Cliftonberg, go ahead, sir.
We're ready to make a motion when discussion is complete.
Any other discussion, additions, comments, questions? We're very good tonight about this, appreciate it. Mr. Clinkenbeard?
I'd like to, make a motion that it be on the April ballot, and it would be the 15-year term to sunset.
I'll second that.
Clarification purposes, Mr. Clifford, if it does pass tonight, it will be on April ballot, so just clarify that. I have a motion on the table and a second on the table, is that correct? For a 15-year sunset.
Correct.
I'm going to forego the April piece of it, but
If the April was the default on there, then.
April's default on there.
Yep.
So, I have a motion and a second, for a 15-year sunset. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
No.
Any abstentions? Motion carries. 7-1-0. Okay. Further discussion, comments, or questions? Anything at all? If that is a second read, we will need a roll call vote.
Councilmember Harrelson?
Aye.
Councilmember Full?
Aye.
Councilmember Cosarbrand?
No.
Councilmember Harder?
Aye.
Councilmember Brashears?
Aye.
Councilmember Grimm?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Clinkenbeard?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-1-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. On the next item.
Be all right, Mark. Let you drive the fire truck.
Thank you.
Your insurance is paid, right?
My advice, don't drive the Freightliner. Need a motion on the first reading of bill number 13-02.
Motion.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Any abstentions? Motion carries.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri, amending Schedule I, Table 1A, General Speed Zones of the Republic Traffic Code.
Thank you, Brenda. Welcome, Mr. Braun. Thank you for being patient. Please give us an overview, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a single change to the, or should I say, affecting one roadway in Missouri, change in the city's general speed zone table, affects Highway 60 in the vicinity of the Oakwood intersection. This is the newly signalized intersection. The speed reduction was planned or anticipated with those improvements. Unfortunately, couldn't get MoDOT to sync them quite precisely. They are in the process of completing the sign installation. They've done a speed study out there. This would reduce the speed limit from 60 miles an hour to 40 miles an hour. Currently, the speed goes up just a couple hundred feet west of the Hamilton Street intersection. That increase in speed limit would be approximately 1,200 feet east of Oakwood. That's just about the very western boundary of the Alpine Village neighborhood. As you are coming into the city, of course, speed limit would drop at that same location from 60 to 40 miles an hour.
I was gonna say eastern part of Republic Ford, but.
Very close.
Yeah.
Thank you. Questions, comments, discussion from Mr. Brock. Mr. Harder?
Why 40? They've got 45 posted on 60 in several different directions. Why 40?
That was the results of their engineering analysis. That is, should be a part of any change in speed limit. This is a state highway, so they did not share with me the mechanics of the speed study, only the results.
Okay, very good.
This isn't a suggestion, it's a directive, right?
Yes, this is the MoDOT's ball field, ball and bat. So we have the option of adopting these limits and enforcing them, but they did call to ask if they thought that if I anticipated any issues with the speed limit. I did not. If there are issues that the council has, certainly between before first reading or first and second, I'd be happy to carry those back to the state. But I do think that's in my opinion at least, a reasonable approach speed to that intersection.
I like the 45 thing, but I agree. It's why having three different speed zones on Highway 60, 60 and 45 is.
It's 40 through out here on the highway right now.
Yeah, Daniel.
So why
Obviously,
Thank you.
someone doesn't.
why would you want to change, why would you want it
I thought, I'm sorry.
Looks like somebody else has been red flagged.
Yeah, it's 45 by the
By the police.
60 and MM.
Well,
from
it's also
MM and that?
Yeah, and the
in
other
Colorado to
direction.
west.
If I may, just real quick, there's been a little bit of a change in approach in the traffic control signs. As you mentioned, if you're coming in from the west side of town, you go from 60, of course, to 55, to 45, and then 40. The new approach is you make the change, the transition that you want to make, in this case 60 to 40, and several hundred feet in advance of that, they'll have a sign that cautions you, essentially say 40 mile an hour ahead. So a little bit of simplicity, but the idea is folks will start that braking action or natural deceleration well in advance of that 40.
That's your question, Mr.
Jeff and I ride in together a lot.
That answered your questions,
Yes, it
Pete
did, thank you.
Okay, good. Other questions, comments, discussion? Anything at all? Mr. Brock has stated this first read. If you do have questions on this or would like to take a look at the engineering study that supports this particular document, please contact Mr. Brock and he will get that information to you. This is a first read. Any other questions, discussion at all?
If I may, Mayor, one more point.
Yes, sir.
We have indicated in the amended table a distance of 1,200 feet from the intersection. They have staked the sign locations, and we're within 0.7 of a foot of 1,200 feet. I just want to make the council aware, we will watch for those signs to go up, and we do anticipate that they will go up before the second reading. We have prepared a special traffic regulation that police chief and myself are authorized to execute so we can begin a temporary enforcement of those new speed limits. But when it comes to second read, we want to have those signs up and the footage is precise. So there may be the opportunity for us to ask you to amend this bill as written at second read.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Additional questions, comments, discussion? That was the first read. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda. Need a motion to have the first reading of bill number 13-03. Motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Any abstentions? Motion carries.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri, vacating a portion of a utility easement across property owned by the Republic R3 School District.
Fair enough. Mr. Brock, give us the overview, sir.
When the school approached us many months ago about the addition of the FEMA building, one of my first comments is, you want to build that on top of one of our water lines. They went through the process of designing and constructing essentially a U-shaped alignment for a new section of water line. If you've been by the site, you know the FEMA building is underway. We still have a active and working system up there. The school has completed the construction. They've dedicated a easement along the new alignment, and this is just a bit of housekeeping to allow them to have fee simple ownership of everything that's going to be underneath their structures. The vacation of the easement does require adoption of an ordinance by the council, however.
Decommission, correct? Is that what you
Yes,
said?
sir.
Okay, thank you. Questions, comments, discussion for Mr. Brock?
Just so I understand, the water line's still gonna be there.
It has been essentially moved to a new section has been built,
Okay.
rendering this not unneeded.
Okay.
And physically, the pipe that would have been under the structure has been removed. There has been a couple sections that essentially abandoned in place.
Okay. Thank you.
Basically, it's our easement, it's underneath their property, we need to give it back to them.
Okay. Good question.
Additional questions, comments, discussion? Get a
This is the first read. If you have other questions, comments, discussion between now and the second read, please contact Mr. Brock. He can give you any map or anything that you might have. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Motion have the first reading of bill number 13-04.
Motion?
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Any abstentions? Motion carries.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri, amending the zoning code and official map by changing the classification of approximately .87 acres owned by Philip and Gloria Brown located at 280 East US Highway 60 from local commercial C1 to general commercial C2.
Thank you, Brendan. Welcome, Mr. Tyson. Please give us the overview, sir.
Just a quick recap of what I mentioned to you earlier. This property is located with frontage on US Highway 60. The majority of the traffic, at least for the commercial businesses located on this site, will likely come from that primary arterial class thoroughfare. There are water and sewer services available to this site that are adequate for commercial development, even general commercial development. The adopted land use plan in this particular case indicates an appropriate zoning of local commercial land use. Anytime we're looking at one of these decisions, if staff is going to recommend anything other than the land use plan, we want there to be a clear and definite reason why. That is not the case here. So the staff recommendation is to remain consistent with what the land use plan recommends, which is local commercial C1. The Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend unanimously by a vote of 4-0 to approve this application from local commercial to general commercial.
Thank you, Mr. Tyson. Questions, comments, discussion, Mr. Casagrande?
Can I get you to say what you just said again? I kinda lost you in the midstream there.
Sure. Which part?
As far as, the planning department recommends passage to
Yes.
C2, and then, planning and zoning also,
Incorrect. The staff's recommendation is to stay with C1. The Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation was to make the change from C1 to C2.
okay. I have a follow-up question as well as that.
The floor is yours,
There
sir.
was discussion of a buffer, between this property and residential.
Right.
Can you expand on that a little bit?
Sure. If the rezone is successful, as soon as the property owner, one of the tenants, would propose to commence a general commercial use, which right now they have two local commercial uses, and they would propose to commence a new one, they would be required to install a buffer yard and screen, which in this case would consist of probably a privacy fence or some kind of wall at least 6 feet in height, and then the planting of trees, which could be wide canopy deciduous type trees, so as to create a visual screen up to a height of 20 feet. And there could, if you recall, in the fiber management rezone case that we heard recently, those were very tight planting of trees to create as an opaque of a buffer as possible. This would not be that. There could be a gap of close to 5 feet between the canopies of these trees.
I remember too, and what makes me think of this a smaller parcel of land, that there was a 25-foot actual, linear buffer between the residential and the commercial application. But this is a smaller piece of land. Are we doing something like that, or?
Between C2 and an R1M, I believe the space is only 15 feet instead of 25.
Okay, thanks.
And would that buffer be on all three sides? Or just on the residential side there to the south?
It would be wherever adjacent to residences, which would include even ones potentially across the street. So it would likely extend on 3 sides of the property in the rear.
Okay, thank you.
For clarification purposes on that, excuse me from that, right now there's a parking lot and a drive that also are right next to that particular residential area. Is that correct?
That's true. And in the front where you have, your parking lot and your buildings, obviously it's wouldn't be a good thing to require a screen to block the view, of your commercial property. In those cases, what's required is you have perimeter landscaping that's also required by code. It consists of shrubs and a minimal amount of trees, and basically what that does is just kind of provide a screen from parked cars, but, it wouldn't be anything like what you would see in the rear of the property.
Thank you. I wanna make sure to clarify as you went down the path of what it is, where it is. We need to also describe that it's also, there's a parking lot and entranceway that are adjacent right across the street from that area, so I wanna make sure we're clear on that. Mr. Claytonbeer, go ahead, sir.
Does the C2 change the type of sign that they can use? They don't really have direct frontage to the highway with Raised Donuts there in front of them. Or, I mean, does that open up the possibility of them having a larger sign there right on their property, that close to residential?
The zoning classification would have no impact on the signage.
What about the parking? Will it have to be paved?
If they propose to commence a general commercial use that would require an increase in the number of parking spaces required or available at the time, then they would be required to bring their parking lot into conformance with our current regulations. At present, that parking lot is comprised of part paved, part gravel, and there are no defined access points in or out of the parking lot. Those nonconformities would all have to be corrected.
Mr. Groves?
You just said, if they were to start a C2 use that would require an increase in parking, how are you determining what parking is there now? It's just a gravel lot.
Right. We would look at what number of parking spaces would be required by code, and then look at what the number of required spaces would be after they propose a use. It's dependent on business, not dependent on zoning. And so if that represented an increase or represented...
Over and above the business that's there now.
That's right. Over and above what's there now, then you're looking at, you lose your grandfathering, essentially, is what happens.
Well, in
Mr. Claytonbeer, go ahead.
in that instance, then, they currently have a flea market, they're gonna continue to run that, and they're adding trailer sales. That would indicate to me additional or increased number of people, correct?
Yes.
So if the proposed use is there, what would you require them to do? Would that be a parking lot change, pave, entrance, exits marked? What would change if they decide to do their trailer sales and repair?
It would be just as you said, it would have to come into compliance with our current regulations. There would be defined access points, paved parking spaces that are striped to meet our dimension requirements for parking spaces, 9 feet wide, 19 feet long, and minimum number of spaces provided, as well as curbing.
And the owner of the property understands that and is willing to do so?
He understands that, yes.
Has he agreed to do all of this?
We spoke with the property owner and his representative, who was Mr. and Mrs. Reeves. I wouldn't say he agreed to do anything, but he did say he understood what the requirements were.
Well, I understand what they're trying to do, but I know him as well, and I can't imagine him not being here tonight to speak up for himself. I think he should have been. I appreciate the Reeves being here in his behalf, but I'd like to ask him some questions.
Well, hold on, Ms. Poole, we're off track.
Well, I'm sorry.
We're off track. As far as the zoning case, you guys are gonna vote it as a zone up or down. Whether the owner agrees, that's gonna be up to planning department. And if he wanted to come and say his case, that's fine. But as far as what he agrees to and what he doesn't agree to has no bearing on what you guys look at as far as the zoning. I understand your concern. I understand you may know him. I understand that, he maybe has been here all his life and however, for the
I
particular...
don't want to throw a cog in the wheel, but
No, I understand.
I'm just curious as to...
I understand, and I wanna make sure that as far as what the council looks at, you guys have to look on and vote it based up or down, whether it's a good use of the land use plan, or whether, regardless of what they're gonna put there, what they're gonna use. The pertinent questions are, buffering, things like that. Those are legitimate pertinent questions, as far as the zoning.
Well, I didn't mean to lead it off straight, but I wanted to make sure the owner
You're
knew
fine.
that the change in the zoning
Well,
would require those things to happen, whether he agreed to do them or not, I don't need to know.
You are correct, Mr. Claytonbeer, whether he agrees to, Ms. Poole's point is there,
cannot be considered to be a part of that. However, as far as what you look at as zoning, is it the zoning right for the location? Is it right for the area? Is it fit the land use plan? All those things that D&Z looks at, that you guys look at, are pertinent in a rezone. So, I understand. However, those questions, if it passes a rezone, it's from council, it passed P&Z. If it passes from council, then those questions need to be directed to Mr. Tyson to ensure that our departments are doing their due diligence, because we do have requirements all across the city, whether it's this business or that business, based on what we have as far as traffic. To Mr. Clinkenbeer's point, once they pass that threshold, then we're on to different stuff. So, I understand. Go ahead.
As I always point out, and Garrett's real good about this, he has provided you a copy of the C2. It doesn't, I don't care what the applicant is telling you they're gonna do with it, doesn't matter. Once you pass it, if you decide to pass it, anything on that C2 is fair game to go in there.
That is correct.
It could be a bar or whatever.
Could be whatever.
So, yeah, and that's,
Minimum lot size for a C2?
I'm sorry?
Is there a minimum lot size for a C2?
I do not believe there is for C2, no, sir. You bring up a good point, parcel configuration and size, and the facilities, the arrangement of facilities that serve it also have an impact on which of those C2 uses are maybe feasible at this location, which is always also something that we look at. But like Ron said, that full list would be available to any future owner or the current owner.
and ingress and egress is on side streets for this particular piece of property as well. So, unlike most of our properties on Highway 60 have direct access to direct ingress and egress, off Highway 60 this does not. So, from the side it does. Additional questions, comments, discussion? And again, this is a first read.
The land directly across Maple Street is C1.
Yes, the dentist office, yes.
I'm not quite sure that's correct.
This will be C2, isn't it?
Now, the one to the, if you're looking on this map right here with the colors,
I'm sorry, I said east, I meant west.
This one.
yeah, thank you. I was going to
Oh,
ask
actually, I
about
said
that.
directly across Maples.
Correct. Yeah. 'Cause there's a house on that corner where it's, labeled as C1, correct?
Yeah, I think that's the dentist office.
No, to the east, to the east.
Oh,
Yeah, it
This one
is.
here is
To the east.
Oh, I thought it was residential.
That's residential, but it's zoned as, you have it listed here as C1, is that correct or incorrect?
Future local.
Okay,
I'm looking at this map, yes.
this is our future land use map,
Thank you.
which is an excerpt from our land use plan. This shows what the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council adopted in 2005. This is where we as staff are getting our information, part of our information for our recommendations. This indicates what was decided as the most suitable land uses for these properties in the future.
Thank you, that clarifies what I'm looking at.
Can you give any indication, I'm sorry, I wasn't right.
Go ahead, Mr. Casper, give.
Any indication what planning and zoning, any germane thoughts that they had that got them to vote unanimously to change the zoning and contrary to the land use plan?
To be honest, I can't. Mr. Wilson, he may be able to add something. He was there as well. I don't recall there being a lot of discussion amongst the commission, but I think the comments that were made were favorable to the rezone, which I think was reflected in their ultimate vote. In part, I think it could be that as part of the analysis, and you see this in your staff exhibits, it's not that general commercial is not suitable for this location. The facilities are there to support a general commercial development, which I think is something they looked at. The question is, which is more suitable, the general commercial or the local commercial? Is staff's opinion, and also reflected in the land use plan, that the local commercial was more suitable for this location.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Wilson?
They discussed what was going in, what he's wanting to sell, and he told them trailers. They want to know how many trailers would be out front, and he said 3 or 4 small trailers. The rest would be back behind the fence. They discussed it and voted. That was it.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what they discussed, if that's,
That's just what they talked about.
yeah, I understand. But as far as going to C1, C2, it's up to you. Anything included in C1, if you go to C2, is included in C2 as well, so make sure everybody's clear on that. Additional comments, questions, discussion. This is a first read. Mr. Quickenbeard.
Just to have it on the record, because the staff recommendation that's typed in there is pretty loosely, I guess, written. Just to be clear, the staff recommendation is to stick with what it is and to go no on this.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Additional comments, questions, discussion. Seeing none, if there are any other questions, comments, if you have questions about the maps or anything, please contact Mr. Tyson. He will get those to you. Thank you. On to the next item. Motion to have the first reading of bill number 13-05.
Motion. Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Any abstentions? Motion carries.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri, authorizing and directing the city administrator to enter into an extension of the term of the memorandum of understanding dated February 10th, 2009 with the Christian County Sheriff.
Thank you, Brendan. Chief, give us the overview, sir.
Since Sheriff Joey Kyle's been elected over in Christian County, and since part of our jurisdiction is in Christian County, we've had a very good relationship with them, and they have provided the Republic police officers with Christian County Commission, so that while we're going about our business at our jurisdiction in Christian County, if we are required for mutual aid or if we stumble into something, that we have the same authority to investigate and take police action, even though it's not within the corporate limits of Republic. What we're asking to do is continue this on an annual basis, indefinitely, until either side decides not to do that. So our city attorney's drafted up a very good addendum to this, and Sheriff Kyle's agreed to it.
Questions, comments, discussion for Chief Love? Anything at all?
Mine's kind of boring. I'm not buying anything.
You're not spending any money.
Not yet, you're not. Anything else for Chief Love?
We're saving it for next term.
Yes, we are. This is the first read. If you have questions about anything on that particular item, please contact Chief Love. Okay. Next item on the agenda was bill number 13-06. I am pulling that off the agenda for a couple different reasons. One, it is we're working with the attorneys to draft some changes and maybe have an entirely new ordinance to bring to council that is going to mirror what Springfield is doing with Greene County. However, those are still negotiations between the attorney. If we put it on the table, or if we put it on the agenda and then table it, then we're stuck with what's in front of you. Therefore, I'm making the executive decision to pull that off the agenda for now, and then we'll bring it back when we have, number one, we have a clear document, number two, when we have clear understanding between the two parties, between Greene County and us. So, just give you a heads up on that. On to other business. Thank you, Chief Lowe. Resolution number 13-R-01, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri to extend the approval of the preliminary plat for the Brookline Business Park subdivision located at the 1500 block of South State Highway MM in the City of Republic, Missouri. Need a motion?
Motion.
Second.
No motion second. Welcome back, Mr. Tyson. Please give us the overview, sir.
Thank you. The Brookline Business Park is a commercial subdivision in the City of Republic located in what you may know better as the former Village of Brookline area. It has 25 lots. The zoning varies from general commercial C2 to light industrial M1. There's also some heavy industrial M2 zoning in this subdivision. The preliminary plat for this subdivision was originally approved in 2007. It was later extended in 2009 and then again in 2011. The owner and developer has requested another extension until the year 2015. The preliminary plat remains in conformance with the applicable development regulations of the city, and a substantial degree of improvements have already been constructed and completed at this site. Planning and Zoning Commission voted unanimously to recommend approval of this item by a vote of 4-0. Staff also recommends approval of this extension.
Questions, comments, discussion from Mr. Tyson?
Is there a reason it's only for 2 years?
That was what was in the request. That seems to be what's customary with these requests.
I mean, I noticed it's been,
Yeah. we got
The
2
original
years.
approval is for 2 years.
is it,
It could be what, at council's discretion.
Other additional questions, comments, discussion from Mr. Tyson? I must say, Mr. Roberts, it's good to see you back in council chambers.
Sure. Earned my nickname tomorrow, 5 years ago.
Yes, you did.
Texas.
Additional questions, comments, discussion from Mr. Tyson? Okay. Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Any abstentions? Motion carries 8-0. We'd like to go into executive session under RSMO 610.021.2. Need a motion?
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Before I call for roll call vote, I would like to say that the end of our open session is finished. After executive session, there will be no further action by the council. We will have a regular meeting adjournment right after executive session, and therefore conclude our day's business. Roll call vote.
Councilmember Harrison?
Aye.
Councilmember Full?
Aye.
Councilmember Cosgrove?
Aye.
Councilmember Harder?
Aye.
Councilmember Brashears?
Aye.
Councilmember Brown?
aye?
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Clinkinger?
Aye.
Motion carries 8-0. We'll take a